Welcome to the Drag Me to the Movies podcast. I'm Joe.
I am Ned.
And in this episode, we're going to talk about Sinners from 2025. I know, right?
Ooh,
It's a brand new movie, Ned.
it
We're
is. It's fresh off the
we've run
presses.
we've run out of old movies to review, so now it is
No,
just the
we
new.
have not.
You're right. You're right. Anyway, Sinners directed by Ryan Coogler, and is casted by Michael B. Jordan twice, Miles Catton, Saul Williams, Andreen Ward-Hammond, Jack O'Connell, Tanaj L. Jackson, Dave Maldonado, and Aiden and Clarday, as well as a bunch of others. So, Ned, what did you think about Sinners?
Uh so spoilers. I love it.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, I don't know, like, the casting order on IMDb is a little weird because you also have Haley Steinfeld here and Omar Benson Miller. It's a great cast all around. But before we kind of get into the larger conversation here, I do want to kind of add a little thing to the beginning here. So, this is Mississippi, 1932. The movie primarily takes place over a little bit longer than one single day, but generally one day. And just some background, like Michael B. Jordan, Ryan Coogler, this is their fifth movie that they've worked on together. The other four is the Fruitvale Station, which I have not seen.
Okay.
Creed, Black Panther, and then Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So
Interesting.
I don't know which ones of those you have seen.
I've seen the Black Panthers, and I think that's it.
Okay, so you haven't seen Creed.
No.
Are you familiar with the premise of that one?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. That one, I know I enjoyed that one, and now I'm definitely gonna have to check out the first movie, Fruitvale Station. So this movie is a mixture of genres. We got mostly drama going on, but it has horror, thriller elements, and kind of action as well. So it's got a good balance of everything. And it had a budget of $90 million, but it's definitely surpassed that. And I think it's going to continue to do so, as it just came out digitally this past Tuesday.
Do you own it already?
I own it already. I watched it again. Oh my God, it's so good. So, yes, this movie has a lot of things going on, but a lot of it is centered around music. And usually anytime someone does that very well, I enjoy it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it it tackles music very well. Very artistically too, and in a good way. Like there's some times where like music can be super involved with a film and brought to the forefront, in which it's in like a super artsy fartsy way is the best I can describe it.
Yeah.
Like was it Rocket Man, the Elton John film?
Mm-hmm.
I did not like the way they incorporated music in that film. It was a little too trippy for me. But in this one, you could argue is equally trippy in certain scenes, but I love that music is almost a character in its own right, I guess, in this
Yeah.
film. So yeah, I agree with you.
Good. So obviously there's also some other things going on in here, between like the KKK being in here. You have kind of like the Irish representation, which, kind of early America, Irish and blacks were not held in a high regard. So this movie kind of plays upon the similarities there. And then it also has kind of like some things going on with the vampires. Like, as they create new vampires, those individuals then try to force themselves onto others. So there's some really nice like symbolism stuff going on that I appreciate, and when someone handles that very well. And the writing, dialogue, all the things in this movie are top notch. I also really appreciate, like, Ryan Coogler and where he drew inspiration for. Like, he was really listening to a lot of Metallica 1 when making this and trying to
Hmm.
match the beats of that song and how that transitions throughout the playing. He also drew inspiration from Dusk Till Dawn, which I think definitely you can draw parallels just from the vampires alone. Um, and then also a movie called The Faculty. I don't know if Joe, have you seen that one?
I've not.
So that's kind of like an older, I want to say 90s off the top of my head, but um, there's essentially like a parasitic kind of alien that starts taking control of a school and trying to spread itself across everyone. So some
It's an interesting
similarities
premise.
from that point of view. Yeah. Um, there's a lot of great standout scenes in this movie, which I'll kind of speak at some of those. But another movie that this movie definitely has a scene that kind of is probably inspired by, but you have the garlic eating scene where it's very similar to the scene from The Thing and how they're trying
That's
to weed
true.
out.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. And the way
Yeah.
they implemented, I thought was very well handled. Which that scene, followed by the following scene, leads into like pretty much the only hang up I have about that movie, but I will save that for later. Um,
Okay.
and there's some things in here like after watching it a second time, things played out a little bit differently for me. So, for example, the first time I saw it, after had watching it that first time, in my head, I had the like opening scene where Sammy is approaching the church in the car.
Mhm.
In my head, he was way more torn up and bloody than what I observed watching it the second time. I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just me, like how things play out in the movie, kind of escalating and my recall being twisted because of how things went, but that was kind of an interesting observation that I made with myself as I
Yeah,
watched it a
I
second
could
time.
s I could see that just from a the second time around, you knew what was coming,
Mm-hmm.
maybe,
Yeah.
like, because it's far more bloody in the second half of the film than it is at the beginning. So the
Yes.
beginning almost that opening is kind of it almost feels out of place, the first time you watch it. At least it did for me, because I was like, "What is going on here?" Because really the first half is so different.
Yeah.
Um, but sorry, go ahead.
No, no, that's fine. Um, but you have kind of like him walking into the church, and there's the priest or preacher standing up there doing his sermon, and he says, "Come on, son," and like initially I had no idea that that was actually his dad, and he's calling him son because he is his son. Um,
Right.
but he has these flashes of evil as he's walking down towards his dad that I thought were integrated very well. And obviously the boy has kind of a slightly, I guess, maybe jaded relationship with his dad because his dad doesn't want him to play music and wants him to let everything go, but he doesn't want to. That's what he feels inspired to do. And I feel they did a very good job of taking this story, covering all that in a single day, and introducing us to these characters and what happens on that one day. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, like I said, it's that whole beginning is kind of foreshadowing to everything else. And I don't know about you, but the first time I watched the film, I
Mm-hmm.
know this isn't exactly answering your question, but it is kind of in a roundabout way. Is that it was the first half of the film, the first time I watched it was kind of okay to me.
Right.
Like like I if I would have just watched the film once and reviewed it, I probably would have reviewed it a little lower than what I am today. But going back and watching it again, I appreciated a lot of the stuff that takes place in that first half
Oh yeah.
for it to build into that second half.
Yep.
There's a lot of foreshadowing and callbacks, which I guess is my way of answering your question. Is what are my thoughts? Is that they do a really good job at foreshadowing
Mm-hmm.
and really playing into in a roundabout way. The music's going to be a big part of this film.
Right.
with that whole busted guitar and him gripping onto it, and yeah, man, I could gush about this film all day
Oh
long.
my gosh, yes. And that's kind of one of the things I also want to throw out real quick is like I don't think we've gotten into anything like too spoiler related yet. So if you haven't seen this movie and you don't want us to spoil something, please take the time to go out and see it, and then come back and listen.
Yeah, pause this episode right now, bookmark it in your app, and come back.
Yeah, for sure. But as we continue, like there's a lot of things that kind of, we follow Sammy essentially, which, kind of makes sense. And then you're introduced to his cousins, the twins, which are both portrayed by Michael B. Jordan. We got Smoke and Stack. And I really love how they handled them in this movie. Like not only Michael B. Jordan's performance, as kind of representing the two different characters and personalities that they have and tendencies. Red is a little bit more kind of upbeat and, talkative, where Smoke is a little bit more reserved and the quiet type that isn't afraid to take action, like when he shoots the two guys that were in the back of his truck, which was one of my favorite scenes and how that played out. But gosh, the way they had him interact with himself. I don't know if you saw any behind the scenes stuff. I didn't get a chance to look into too much, but I know one thing they used was like a kind of new rig that they called the Halo rig. That essentially was a series of cameras on a Halo loop that rested on top of like shoulder rests. So Michael B. Jordan would put that on and it would capture every single angle of his face during that performance, which they could then go back and replace on. They did have a stand-in performing for it. But you just look at the scene, and they show it twice actually in like a little bit of flashback later. But the scene where he's grabbing a cigarette from his brother and then leaning over to have him light it for him, like just that scene is so seamless. And to have him be performing that with himself is a technical feat that I admire. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I agree. I didn't know about how they shot that, but this was probably one of the best examples of how you can do uh same actor on the screen at the same time.
Yeah.
It really makes you feel like they are like there's two Michael B. Jordans standing next to each other, the way they interact with each other.
Which, did you know Michael B. Jordan played both characters and he doesn't have a twin?
Yes.
Okay, because my wife
Yep.
didn't.
I mean, I if I didn't know that ahead of time, I
No,
wouldn't have
no.
believed it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like I had to
absolutely.
ask her because I was like, do you know who Michael B. Jordan is? And she really hasn't seen any of his other movies. I think the only one she had seen where he was in before, because she hasn't seen Black Panther or anything like that, was Chronicles, which I don't know if you've seen that movie. That's one of his earlier
I've not.
movies. It's a good one. He's a little bit, I would say it's not his first, because I think he had a few, like Hardball, he was in that baseball movie. So kind of like a little bit early in his career, but Chronicles was a good movie. But obviously it was years ago, so she didn't really remember it. I think it was like 2012-ish probably for that one. So yeah, it was enough that she honestly thought they were the two twins. So I thought that was a interesting thing to kind of see her point of view on it compared to mine, where I was obviously familiar with him.
Yeah, I'd love to make fun of her for it, but I can't because it's really well done.
Yeah, yeah. And then like there's this history with the twins that I thought that was kind of interesting. Like they talk about how they worked for Capone. They're coming back from Chicago. They're setting up this juke joint, which I really hadn't heard of that phrase prior to this movie. But it's just essentially like a club kind of where you can go unwind, listen to some blues or jazz, and just dance, drink, have fun, unwind from your day. So that was kind of cool. There's also a lot of sexual stuff going on in this movie. Talking to the boy about, how to please a woman and the ice cream metaphor. You
Yep.
have the relationship between what's Haley Steinfeld's character? Was it Mary?
I believe so.
So Mary and Stack and their relationship and how very explicit that gets.
Mhm.
So it's kind of interesting to me to always see movies and how they decide to kind of incorporate those things. So like they don't do a lot of showing. I think the only real showing they do is when Smoke and Annie are hooking up. But overall, I appreciate the styling that they chose to kind of go with for that. Do you have any reactions or thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, even the part with Annie was pretty tame, like you could see thrusting happening, but like not from the waist down. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
like I thought it was handled tastefully in the film. It
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
like
agreed.
because the other thing we haven't really talked about yet is that this film kind of starts as like a gangster film,
Oh yeah,
in a
yeah,
way. So in keeping up with that kind of theme, you would think like there would be a lot of like woman abuse and like taking women for granted kind of stuff, but it's not. It's complicated relationships that happen in a lot of these cases. So
yeah.
I think it's handled tastefully.
Agreed. Very much agreed. So yeah, there's all of that stuff. That I think just that alone makes me want to watch this movie. Then you get to all like the standout scenes, um, the music where they have like the ancestors, past and future, coming into play. Like that was the scene. I think we discussed Sinners on one of our extras a little bit ago. Um, that I thought would be polarizing. Like I could see how someone could easily be turned off from that being in the movie, but it worked for me. I love how they incorporated all the different times and representations there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I never really thought about that before. Um, so let me ask you, what really
Hmm.
drove you or drew you to that point? Like
I don't know.
what
I
really
just
brought
I
you?
feel like some people, like if you're watching something from 1932, you're holistically focused on stuff that's from that era, and seeing stuff like someone doing an electric guitar or doing some break dancing and twerking or whatever, like I could see how someone would be pulled out of that scene from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. It really like that was probably one of like the cornerstone
Mm-hmm.
shots of the film for me.
Okay.
It was definitely a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Cuz I mean, to your point, like it was like what is this? What is happening? But then I came to appreciate it more.
Yeah.
Uh and definitely the second time the roller coaster was over and it was more of a just this is art.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
And I think to kind of expand upon my response, like I have a feeling like that is a little bit of me trying to think like, would my parents like this movie? Um,
Mm.
and I don't think they would.
Yeah, I don't think mine would either. Um and that's a good question. Like, why would they not? I mean, part of it to me is I think the theme of vampires
Hmm.
probably
Yeah.
would alone disqualify the film. Uh, but I don't know. Like, I think you're right. I think the appreciation for what they're trying to do with the mythic
Hmm.
of of music and how it goes with the vampire and themes and stuff like that is probably a bit of a stretch
Yeah.
for some people.
Yeah. Agreed. But yeah, that's definitely like a scene that I loved how they pulled everything together and it played in so well. And then you have not only Sammy coming in doing his music, um, you have the older gentleman that they picked up at the train station. You have, was it Perline? She comes in and sings and starts stomping on the stage. Like They just do a very good job of not having like a single performance, but there were a few times where, oh gosh, like people were down dancing and the music didn't fit necessarily what they were dancing like to me, which whatever, it was fine. It's, one of the points was when Sammy and Smoke were having a talk up in the loft. Like people were down there dancing. They didn't have. It could have been just a scene where they had some different music playing in the background for that conversation, and it wasn't actually the music playing that the people were dancing to, type thing. But that was something that happened a couple of times in here. But I don't penalize this movie for it because it worked. Did you
Yeah, I
notice
didn't
that at
even
all?
notice. I
Yeah.
didn't. Although I don't know if it would have bothered me because I mean, if you go to like
Hmm.
a dance club and stuff too, there's always some people doing wild shit
Yeah,
that doesn't
for
really
sure.
fit the tune, you know. So, I mean, and there's fine alcohol and liquor involved
Oh yeah, for sure.
throughout this party too. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, you might be getting there, but while we're on the topic of music,
Hmm.
I love the contrast in music styles between the blues happening inside the club
Hmm.
versus the music that the vampires are putting out.
Right, like the
Like
more
just
bluegrass country.
right, right, and not even from like a social standpoint, but just
Hmm.
from a contrast of like just how drastically different those two music genres are.
Oh yeah.
Kind of helps separate how drastically different the vampires and the folks, having fun in the speakeasy or the club are, just, human versus the undead. So even that I think does a really good job at like putting that stark contrast of like something's not right here. It's too different from the tone of the film.
Hmm. No, I completely agree. And then like even to kind of expand upon that, they have other things like rock and rap, not necessarily rap, more rock or heavier music that gets introduced for like some of the intense scenes that I
And
appreciated.
yeah, yep. Well, even in that scene you originally talked about, there's some hip hop going
Hmm.
on.
Yeah, it's
So yeah,
hip
there's
hop,
there's a
but
little bit of
not
everything.
necessarily like a lot of rapping per se.
Right, right.
It's more like the hip hop, breakdancing types music.
Yeah, almost more 90s hip hop.
Yeah, yeah. So, obviously, that kind of stuff I think was all great. It was a little interesting to me how much like this movie ends up kind of bouncing back and forth in time. Like you kind of have all this stuff that ends up happening at the barn, and then later in the movie, you get a glimpse of them all showing up at the barn and like setting it up and like some of the character interactions there, like where they're prepping the food or getting the beer and stuff organized, getting the stage stuff set up. It was something that I was kind of not caught off guard by because they were obviously trying to give you that reflection on what this day was for some of these characters that I kind of appreciate how they handled that. Is that how you took that too?
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there's every time the Smokestack brothers, like, came across somebody,
Mm-hmm.
there was, like, a mixed reaction, right? They were either, like, super friendly with them or they feared them,
Great.
and seeing them all, like, slowly build uh, their support system, I'll call them, right, to help set that bar up, like, it was cool just to see, like, okay, these guys are, thugs in a way,
Mm-hmm.
but respected, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm right there with you, like, them building that, and it's almost now that I'm saying this out loud, it almost is kind of like they're building their own church
Yeah. In a
in a
way.
way, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah. Nice. So yeah, I think some other standout scenes. You have the actual like barn fight. Um, which this is where I'm probably going to talk about the one thing I would probably change about this movie. So in the barn fight, you have the Asian lady yells out that they can come in, and you had the garlic scene right before that. There was a certain amount of people in that ring eating the garlic. You get to the fight where the vampires are actually coming in, because they've been welcomed. There are some additional people that were not in that garlic ring. And that's something I observed, which is it a big deal? No. Is it something I would prefer they have changed? Yes. Because there's a lot of death happening in there, which is appropriate, but there's definitely people that were not in that garlic circle.
Did you go back and like watch it frame by frame to make sure that
I did.
you're in fact seeing people?
I
Okay.
had other people note it on the internet, but it's something I observed the very first time I watched it. Like I was talking to my wife afterwards. I was telling her, I was like, there's something off about that scene to me where I think there's more people that were not in that garlic circle. And
Yeah,
then,
well played. I didn't pick up on that, so
yeah,
it's
I think it was
well
like
done.
maybe 2 other guys at least, but I was like, there's not that many people in the garlic circle because like as you're going around, like the people that were in the garlic circle, you were all pretty familiar with as far as being in the movie, and then there's other people dying. I'm like, wait, what? Where did they come from? So, other than that, great scene. I like how it kind of leads into what kind of feels like what could have been an ending. At least the ending of Remick and his crew that were exposed to the sunlight. There is also the next kind of big scene for me was the cleansing of the KKK, where, you know, Stack and Smoke, they said, if you ever come back on our grounds, we're going to raise arms against you. And, you know, they were conspiring, which it was interesting. I was really kind of trying to figure out where Remick came from. Obviously, it was kind of sunset. Those Indian individuals were hunting him down, and that's where he stumbled across the other KKK members that were going to come to the, you know, juke joint and kill people. So that's one just more of a curiosity of like, yes, he had like sun blisters on him and things. Like, was that just him running through the cornfield or something? And that was protecting him enough that he could run in the sunlight and get to them. Like, that was just me and vampire lore and stuff trying to work out in my head, like how that happened. Cause like, it kind of looks like he just drops out of nowhere and then runs up to their door.
Yeah.
But
I kind of looked at it in a way that like, because he almost feels like he is the elder. Well, he is the elder vampire, right? But
oh
like,
yeah.
he's not the original vampire. You'd have to imagine, right? So like,
No.
I just imagine he had some more like power, you know, in ways like, you
Maybe.
know, at one point he takes that guitar to the face that had silver in it, right?
Yeah,
So he
possibly.
survives that. You know what I mean? So I just felt like he was more portrayed as like a big baddie than
Yeah,
the weak,
that's fair.
as weak as the others were.
Yeah. But anyway, that leads into the whole like Remick kind of warning them that, you know, they were going to conspire to come kill you. And that kind of gave Smoke a heads up that he knew they'd be coming back to the juke joint at some point. So he pulled out that locker and prepared for battle. And just how that scene played out was beautiful. Even to the point where, you know, he's sitting on the ground having that last smoke, and his child and woman are there to welcome him. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That was a good way to wrap it up. Although it's not technically wrapped up. There's
No, no.
there's 2 after credit scenes in this film. Well, 1 mid credit scene and then 1 after credit scene.
Mm-hmm. Which I think when I saw it in theaters the first time, I did not stick around for the very, very last one.
I
But
didn't
I did,
either.
yeah. So it was kind of nice to watch it digitally and watch that last part. But yeah. So I think that covers most of the things I wanted to kind of dig into. I do have a few, like, obviously standout characters for me are Sammy, Smoke, Stack, Remick, but there's so many people that did very well in this one. There's a lot of good quotes in here. Like, you know, nah, we cousins. And then, you know, Sammy comes along and he actually is the cousin. They kind of made the one comment where they figured they would deal with the devil we know. I liked that comment. And then there's the preacher father who said, like, you keep dancing with the devil, one day he's going to follow you home. I think that's kind of a general sentiment that people have uttered before. And then there's one where I think the KKK guy says "grand opening, grand closing," which is a quote of a Jay-Z encore song lyric.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that was like, I knew I had heard that before, and I was like, where have I heard that? Oh, that's right, Jay-Z. So all that, the visuals in this were amazing. I would love to see some more behind the scenes of it, and how they shot some of the stuff, especially with the twins. Writing, music, all that stuff is so good. And then, as I said, the only thing I would really want to see changed about it is that garlic scene, including the other individuals that were in that fight.
You would get rid of the garlic scene altogether, or you mean
No.
just the inconsistency?
I'd want it there, and like at least have them standing there that they're in the ring. Not necessarily have to have the camera focus on them eating the garlic. Like they could have played that off in a way that showed that they went through the line and were vetted. But at least have them in that scene so you know they're there for when the fight comes and they die.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, I don't think I really want to get into too many other details. That's kind of my experience, and I really think you should see this.
Yeah.
How about you?
I will add one thing. I think you touched on it briefly when we talked about Michael B. Jordan's performance, but the Smokestack brothers themselves, I
Mhm.
love I love their dynamic. I know we talked about, the coolness of Stack and kind of the roughness of Smoke, right?
Right.
Um, but their camaraderie and the respect between the two is really cool. Like
Yeah.
it's when I think it's twice, right? It happens where they basically say like you're I'm nothing without you. You're
Mhm.
you're like my better half kind of thing. Like
Right.
that's something you usually hear between like a man and a woman or like, like
Right.
spouses, never between siblings. And I thought that was kind of touching and really added to the I guess the impact of or Stack's death when it
Well,
happened.
Smoke's death.
Oh,
Stack
Smokes, I'm sorry.
technically didn't die.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Stacks kind of death.
Yeah.
Undeath.
I mean, they even played upon it a little bit, like even with them as that rattlesnake was in the back of their truck, where Stack pulls the knife and throws it over to Smoke. Smoke stabs him. Like just the way they played off each other. They were on the same page throughout the entire movie and what their goals are and what they're doing. It's a great partnership. So,
Indeed.
but yeah, is there
Yeah, I got
anything
nothing to
else?
add. You covered pretty much everything I was going to. Well, actually, not pretty much everything I would cover. Uh, so yeah, I mean, we kind of already spoiled our review at the beginning. What would you
Yeah,
give this?
I mean, I, I think we discussed it on the extra where I said I gave it a 5 out of 5. I hold true
Yep.
with my 5 out of 5. What about you?
Yep. I'm at a 5 out of 5 as well.
Now, did you say you weren't a 5 out of 5 on the first watching?
I probably was more of a 4.5.
Okay.
Just because I felt like the first half was kind of boring at first to me.
Hmm.
Like I mean, it was well done. It was just kind of boring in that like I didn't know where it was going. Like
Gotcha.
really didn't have much of a like this is where we're heading. This is why this matters.
Hmm.
It was just seemed like a lot of like, oh, we're having reunions with people kind of, mood
Yeah.
for most of it. But yeah, now like that second half really differentiates itself from the rest of the film. And yeah, watching it the second time, I appreciated the first half a lot more.
Yeah, I think there's so much set up in that initial portion that it held my attention the entire time and brought me into the world, the characters, like what they're trying to accomplish. Like it did such a good job of all around. Um, Big kudos to the cast, everyone who worked on it, Ryan Coogler, who, wrote and directed it. Um, it's it's a masterpiece for me. Like it's one of those movies that I think will define so many other movies later on. Which, one thing I do want to kind of touch on before, like obviously I mentioned this was inspired by a few movies, but I do feel that there are a few others out there that, are not necessarily as good, but there are some parallels or relatable things to it. So the first one I'm going to throw out is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Which, have you seen that one?
I have.
So obviously kind of takes place at a similar era of time, different style movie overall, but if you liked that aspect of this movie, I definitely recommend that one.
Music plays a big role in that film as well.
That it does. 30 Days of Night is another one. Just the whole vampire thing and seclusion and all that stuff I think plays in. And then the other two I have are vampire movies that I don't know. I don't think they're directly relatable, but I'm gonna throw them out there anyway. Blade, the first one, and a movie called Day Shift, which I think, if I remember correctly, is on Netflix. But both of those, I feel like I need to go watch all these movies right now. So that's why I'm throwing them out there. Is I recommend them if you like Sinners.
Nice. I've seen Blade, but I've not seen Day Shift, so I'll have to add that to my list.
Nice.
All right. Well, I guess that brings us to what our next episode is going to be, right?
It does.
We're going to be taking a listener recommendation, isn't that right, Ned?
That is right. We have been asked multiple times by this individual when we're going to get around to this.
Well, before you say it, Ned, I feel like this film makes sense. We've been doing this podcast for a long time, almost 101 episodes, I think.
I think
at
we're
this point,
over
maybe, roughly
109.
Are we over that? Okay,
I think so.
So at this point, you and I are kind of family, you could
Yeah.
say. So what movie could play into family, Ned?
Maybe one with Vin Diesel. Maybe the name of the movie.
Things quick? Are things quick and angry?
Maybe they're Fast and Furious.
Okay.
So yeah, we're gonna watch the Fast and the Furious, because Joe has not seen any of them, to my understanding.
No, I've seen the first one.
Okay.
That we're gonna watch.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time, and that's the only one I've seen.
Okay.
And so so we're gonna start here and see. We probably won't go back to back like we did with the X-Men stuff, but
yeah,
I think we're gonna have a Fast and Furious arc at some point.
Yeah.
Over this podcast.
I think there's a few that we also need to go back to eventually as well, but I'm definitely curious to get your thoughts on that franchise and how it progresses.
Yeah, I'll be curious. I know just from the internet's buzz of the last one of them going into space in a muscle car tells me that it goes off the rails, but yeah, I'm just curious how quickly it goes off the rails.
True.
So I'm into it. And then in between, we're gonna have our next extras, where we're gonna talk about the actors that are kind of repellents for us to go see movies. I guess is the way I would describe that, right?
Yeah.
Once you see an actor on the credit card and you're like, I don't think so. I don't think I'm going to watch that one. So
yeah,
we'll see where that conversation takes us.
I have
But
some
in the meantime,
solid picks for that.
Oh,
I
good.
think. No, I was just gonna.
I think I do too. But
yeah.
Oh, good.
No, that's generally all I was gonna say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Stay tuned. Listen to the next episode to find out if Ned did have some interesting picks or if he picked ones that everyone else did.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm the one
too.
who's generic. Absolutely. And you know where you can do that, Ned?
I do.
On the internet. You can do it where?
That's a good place.
Do it where we're at, Ned. Tell us.
To the Movies on Threads and Facebook. Oh, sorry. To the Movies Pod.
Oh man, what are you, Joe?
Yeah, I know it's my turn to mess it up.
You don't know our social media handles?
I mean, I do usually, but yeah. Oh well.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll talk to you later, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
That's a huge bitch.
Oh, God.